Welcome back to the Fractal Trading Update. We are looking at major market movements. Let's focus this week on indices and their major direction, if they have one. We do see a couple of new developments in the euro pairs, in the US dollar pairs. Gold and silver haven't done too much. British pound has been a little bit more positive this week. We are still running down though. This week, a little bit shorter of an update. Let's only focus on the indices worldwide. We're starting out with the Dow Jones Index. It's the CFD again. And what we see, if we take a look at the movement that has happened in 2016, we want to ignore this type of correction. We've talked about it in the past. Now let's focus on what has happened in 2016. You get your low right at the beginning of the year down here, a strong move to the upside. It hits this area where price finds supply and some sort of resistance takes it back into the balance zone. After that, it fails in the balance zone and exceeds the previous fractal that has been created at the end of this up move. So in here you do see a turnaround of the price heading out into the previous trend direction, and at that point we're actually topping out above these highs here, again marked by these fractals. What you do want to see at that point is some follow through. You have your breakout being hit on this bar, and the next week then had been a nice follow through, but ever since that, and we're really talking about a time frame since the middle of July, nothing has happened. Instead, we are headed back down into the balance zone here, and we now have two fractals in the balance zone. The ending of the last week gave us that new fractal, and remember what they are. They are the places where the market decides to make a decision change. So they will always occur at that point where you have a little bit more of a market movement into the opposite direction. And when you have this kind of scenario with a bottom down here, a strong move to the upside, a correction, your first fractal, and then it takes it out, you do actually want to see this go much higher, simply because you have your sort of perfect entry setup, which always looks like this. You have a bottom, the price goes up, it creates the first fractal after it has crossed the alligator, the balance zones. If you just, kind of symbolically draw that in here, you are below the balance zone here at that low, which you can see here as well, and then price goes up above the balance zone, gives you that fractal, corrects into the balance zone again, just like what we saw here, and then it exceeds that fractal I've already marked right there. And then you get your trend, and that's exactly what you want to see, kind of the perfect scenario. However, if it doesn't get going in this area, which pretty much is this area here, if this doesn't happen, instead you get this kind of stuff, which we do see here, you don't have a trend, and there is not much hope for a trend at that point, in my opinion. What you do need at that point is the oscillator going below the zero line, giving you a major correction, just like in here, and then you have a chance for this coming out again if it doesn't go too low, and that will be decided by the higher time frame. And if you just take a look at that higher time frame here in the Dow Jones, what we've already talked about as well is the fact that on this time frame we have a divergence forming. Just take a look here into the awesome oscillator, the momentum indicator that will give us a momentum divergence. Here at that point we have a higher high here, even though it's barely a higher high compared to this level. We do have a divergence, and if there is no pressure to the upside anymore, and you can see that in the last 3 months, today is the October 30th, if we don't see this head out in the first couple of days, next week, then what we do have is a divergence and prices probably heading back down into the balance zone, which means we will see it go here. For some reason the alligator isn't loading right now, but you can guess where it is. We looked at it the last time as well. It will head down into the balance zone on the monthly, that is. And if it does something like that on the monthly, what you have is a fractal breaking to the downside on the lower time frame. And we saw that here in the weekly we have two fractals. This is number one right here, and this is number two, and you could both use for a sell signal. So we are in early if we take that for a short. We are not following the trend, but we are reacting to this missing kind of pressure to the upside. We are reacting to the failing strength to continue what used to be an uptrend. We do want to keep tight stops. We do want to pay very close attention to how much risk we take in something like that. But in the Dow Jones, what I see is quite a bit of weakness and not too much chance for a continuation, as this kind of market behavior has been going on for quite some time, and we just do have to realize that as soon as we are inside the balance zone, we are waiting for a fractal in that ongoing trend. But if we are staying in there too long, the chances of the uptrend continuing are very slim. If we take a look at the German DAX index, kind of a similar picture appears. You have a market that broke out right there. It did it last week. It was barely followed by any price action immediately in the same week as the breakout occurred. Still, the same scenario is true here. You got your low, it goes higher, there's another low. You have a fractal created here already. It was taken. After that was taken, what you do expect is this typical kind of market movement. But now here we might be in danger of seeing the same kind of scenario developing, just as in the Dow Jones, where we don't have a follow through. Or in the Dow we did have that one bar follow through, but then the market retraced, and even though it hasn't dropped too much, we are seeing two fractals in the balance zone. Maybe the same kind of scenario could happen here in the DAX as well. Why is there no follow through after such a great breakout? Taking a look at the monthly chart, we are not higher than we've been before. However, the fractal on the monthly has been taken as well, and that October here doesn't look as bad as it does on the Dow Jones. Still, we don't see a lot of activity, don't see a lot of action here after this fractal has been taken. The last 3 months were really boring. Mind that we have a major correction here already. It is a valid buying point, but in a major correction, nobody knows how complex it will be. So far, these are the sort of legs that we were getting. Whether we head out to the upside more, or we will continue down and then take it to the upside, or even go lower than this, maybe somewhere here, we don't even know. So we are long in this market right now on the weekly since it broke out, but I have a very tight stop on this, and I haven't been too confident in the indices during the last couple of weeks, so my risk is very small as well. Let's take a look at the FTSE index here, UK 100 CFD, as it has been requested by King's Cross. Thank you for posting your comments, man. Now let's go from top to bottom in that chart. We have a monthly chart which I think is extremely interesting and makes, in my opinion, the best case for a possible bearish tendency in global markets. If you draw that line here at the old high, you can see that this high had been exceeded in two areas, and that was here, and it's doing it again right now. Taking a closer look now, zooming in a little bit, what we can see is a moved to the upside from all the way down here. It moved way up there. Now you have your major correction going on. Now this is the monthly chart, and usually trends persist pretty well on the monthly. However, if you do have a divergence like we do have in here right now, it's a very minor divergence, but it's still there. It exceeded that previous high. We have a major correction in here, and what we actually see in the oscillator is a major divergence that had been going on ever since the market made this high over here. So what I now look at, or what I now see in this, really is a trend coming up, a major correction, and now without stopping after the Brexit, even though that doesn't matter, but after the Brexit news, we have been straight up in this market. If you really look at this, you can see how the price went up like this while the oscillator is still at the bottom, or kind of intertwined even. It's just starting to open up. They're just starting to head into a trend mode, which means they are open. Now what this means is you have quite a huge angle in this, and what that shows us is sort of a rubber band effect. It goes up straight, and that means it will come back down probably just as quick. Now when we take a look at the weekly, what we can really see is the tremendous action down here with a huge bar that week here in June, right there when the Brexit vote occurred. And then you do have smaller bars, which means less volatility, and now we are at the top here. The last 4 weeks they have remained in the same area. We have moved quite a bit in this market, and we also have a divergence in the indicator, even though this is pretty. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. I do have some issues navigating here sometimes, even though this divergence is very, very small. Still, we are hitting a very important area that is the all-time high in the FTSE, and this area carries a lot of supply. So I am expecting this to head down as well. I have no clue if we might stop here, or if it comes back down all the way there. We'll see. Anyway, I do not see too much strength even in that. Thanks again for watching the video, and post a comment, like the video, and hopefully see you next week.